An angle rule of thumb. Democrats will always side with criminals against law enforcement. Always. And Minnesota Democrats will go even further. Instead of calming the situation, as Mike just referenced, they will incite more violence, especially against ICE agents.
What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets. And in this case, quite literally killing people. So they are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull.
Wow, he's fast. It had only been a few hours, and the dancing queen had already conducted the definitive investigation. He anointed himself judge and jury, effectively calling the ICE agent a murderer. Fry, with his lies and his ongoing defamation against ICE, has put a target on the backs of every immigration officer on the streets.
I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the f*** out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead.
What an embarrassment this man is. We all know that if it was the ICE officer who had been shot by a protester, Fry would still be blaming Trump. The administration today was having none of this. Noam believes the video is clear.
This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues.
I want to point out she was at the border earlier today, and she cares about her agents. She flew up to Minneapolis to do that press conference. But we'll wait to see what the investigation finds. But given how dangerous things have gotten out there, these agents are in an almost impossible situation on the streets. The bottom line is Democrats encourage anti-police, anti-ICE hatred because they think it's good for them politically. They cater to radical constituents who believe that all ICE agents are racist, enforcing illegitimate laws, and therefore they deserve to be threatened, they deserve to be harassed, they deserve to be put in imminent danger of bodily harm. But they claim, of course, the Democrats, to dread these moments.
We've dreaded this moment since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis. Not only is this a concern that we've had internally, we've been talking about it. They are not here to cause safety in this city. What they are doing is not to provide safety in America.
His short little pants are on fire there. They're all desperate to change the subject, though, aren't they, from the Somali fraud investigation, which is exposing the corruption of their constituents. Governor Walz was thrilled to be talking about something else today. But he was as duplicitous as ever, calling for calm as he condemned the ICE operation and, of course, the Trump administration.
Do you have no decency? Do you have no decency? We have someone dead in their car for no reason whatsoever. And I don't want to be right about this, but I said if they do this, they're going to create a chaotic situation where someone innocent's going to get killed. And they did it. Let's let this investigation play itself out. Let's make sure we protect our neighbors. I encourage you to use your First Amendment rights and all of your constitutional rights, but do so in a peaceful manner.
Okay. If anyone has blood on their hands here, it's Walz himself. Let's not forget what he said just a few months ago.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons.
Foreign torture? I mean, look, other than calling in the National Guard, which he did, as Mike referenced, of course, that's smart tonight, the radicals in power have learned nothing from the violent chaos of the Floyd riots. And I was there shortly after that covering it. Minneapolis police abandoned their own precinct in 2020 to arsonists. Total chaos. Hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. Of course, it spread all across the United States. So rather than de-escalating the situation, what the Democrats and radicals do is they stoke the worst instincts in people. Democrats know this, and they're fine with it. So we get what? We get car ramming, we get doxing, attacking agents with bricks, rocks thrown at moving vehicles, even shots taken at them, as we saw in Dallas. So Democrats tonight should be ashamed of themselves. Voters, come on, Minnesota. Wait, you're great people. Pay attention to who your politicians are really representing.
Fox News alert, a woman was killed today during an ICE operation in Minneapolis. An ICE vehicle was stuck in the snow, and while trying to push it out, activists began harassing and blocking their path, boxing them onto the street. A woman parked her car, preventing the ICE agents from leaving, and was ordered to exit the vehicle multiple times. Officers attempted to open her door after she wouldn't comply. That's when she backed up her car and gunned it straight at an ICE agent. The agent opened fire on the driver to defend himself.
What the dude, what the
Kristi Noem, who was in Minneapolis today overseeing operations, is describing it as an act of domestic terrorism.
She had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism.
Multiple eyewitnesses have confirmed that this activist was screaming, yelling, disrupting ICE operations all day. One witness says she was the main car leading the protest.
You know if she was the target?
I don't know if she was a target. They clearly wanted her out of there because she was the main car leading the protest, is my understanding. I talked to another guy who was driving behind her, but she was very successful in blocking traffic. She was doing what she was set out to do, and so they wanted to get her the hell out of there. Yeah.
So it looked like she was impeding ICE vehicles.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
That was her goal.
The woman who lost her life was a self-proclaimed poet from Colorado, with pronouns in her bio. A 37-year-old white woman named Renee Good. The Daily Mail says she leaves behind a lesbian partner and a child from a previous marriage. She was a disruptor, though she considered herself a legal observer, but there's no evidence she had a law degree. Different angles show different things. You can see here the officer was actually hit by the car, and the first round he fired went straight through the front windshield as the car barreled directly at him. When you slow it down, watch the tires. She floors it so hard the tires spin out, and the vehicle heads directly towards the agent, and then bears right later. Kristi Noem says this agent wasn't new. He was well-trained, and he conducted himself by the book. When an agent believes there's a serious threat to his bodily harm or an imminent threat to his life, he's authorized to use deadly force. And this specific officer had been dragged by a car driven by a protester earlier this year in Minneapolis. Cars are a 2,000-pound weapon and have been used repeatedly against ICE agents.
People are being trained and told how to use their vehicles to impede law enforcement operations and then to run over anybody who gets in their way while they go out there and try to disrupt peace and public safety. And Americans deserve better.
This was a split-second decision. He thought he was going to get run over by the car. The woman had been harassing him all day, blocking him, obstructing, not complying. He felt his life was in danger. He'd been throttled by a car before in the same city. Tragic to see someone die. But what would you do?
Now, just to be clear, there are multiple videos from different angles showing, watch this, the car will back up, then it will accelerate with an agent right in front of that SUV. And the wheel of the large SUV, obviously they're refusing to comply with federal officials, runs into the agent, accelerates towards the ICE agent a few feet away, and the DHS, they are now calling it tonight an act of domestic terrorism. But Governor Timmy Walz, he looked at the video, the same one we're showing you, and got in front of a microphone, heavily suggesting that this was an evil act by a rogue ICE agent, while also, of course, blaming Donald Trump. Take a look.
Here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. And you can be assured, whether it's the State Patrol or whether it's the National Guard, their deployment is there to protect Minnesotans from whatever it is. If it's an act of nature, if it's a global pandemic, or in this case, if it is a rogue federal agent. I don't know at this time.
This is the height of reckless irresponsibility, and not to be undone, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, a.k.a. Small Fry, as he's referred to affectionately in his home state and his home city, was even more unhinged, demanding that ICE get the F out of his city. Take a look.
There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here.
Now, maybe he's not familiar with the supremacy clause in the U.S. Constitution, where federal laws, they are enforced by federal agents. That is their job. Or maybe Jacob Frey and Tim Walz are just putting on a show for their radical base, whipping people into a frenzy for political gain. Now, if anyone is doubting that simple fact, just ask yourself the following. Well, where were the emotional press conferences when Americans were raped and murdered by illegal immigrants in their sanctuary state? Did they shed a tear? Did they go on TV? Did they tell the illegals that are violent, get out of our city, get the F out of our city? No, they didn't spend 1 second even thinking about these murders. Remember during the president's joint session speech before Congress, Democratic members of Congress, they could not even get out of their seats and stand for the families of Lake and Riley, Jocelyn Nungary, 2 young women murdered by Biden, Harris, Mayorkas, unvetted illegal immigrants, part of the 10, 12, 14 million illegals they allowed into the country but denied was even happening. But, of course, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has plenty to say about today's shooting. Now, it fit her political narrative, so she's more than willing to stand up and voice her feigned moral outrage. Why didn't she ever stand for Lake and Riley's family? Why didn't she stand for Jocelyn Nungary's family? Did they ever call any of the victims, murdered, raped, other victims of violent crime all over her city that she loves so much, New York City, ever call any of the families of victims? I don't think so. Not that I know of. Take a look.
What we saw today was a criminal murder a woman and shoot her in the head while she was trying to escape and flee for her life. And I think what we saw today was a manifestation of every American's worst nightmare. Their government turning into a tyranny.
Well, Democrats and AOC, they are busy playing politics and demonizing the agents for the millionth time. Well, she fails to mention that if you get hit or, God forbid, run over by a 2-ton SUV, the chances are you will not survive. In that case, that would be a weapon. That would be self-defense. In fact, every single year, law enforcement officials are killed by people using their vehicle as the deadly weapon. According to DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, there have been over 100 vehicle ramming incidents against federal officials in recent weeks, and that's not all. Take a look.
Today alone in this country, there have been 4 different domestic terrorist attacks on federal officers by the ramming of vehicles. 3 of them happened here in Minneapolis. We've seen over 100 of these vehicle rammings happen in just recent weeks, and this must stop. ICE alone is facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them and an 8,000% increase in death threats against all of them. In fact, the very same officer who was attacked today had previously been dragged by an anti-ICE rioter who had rammed him with a car and drug him back in June. He sustained injuries at that time as well.
So on Monday, we told you about Sia Weaver, the New York... Guess I could just end the monologue.
Man.
Yeah. Relax, people. She was the New York mayor's pick for executive director to protect tenants, and her dream? To dismantle private property because it's racist, especially if it's owned by whites. Take a look.
I think the reality is that for centuries, we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
This would have been better if she got closer to the camera. Yeah. Oh, that was garbage. Where did she go to school? The University of Commie Bitches? Well. And of course, give it time, and this tenant advocate turns out to be as believable as Elon Musk saying he got a vasectomy. While Sia condemns white ownership, her white mom lives in a house worth roughly $1.5 million. Yeah, probably has a yard large enough for Klan rallies. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with owning a nice home. That's the American dream. I worked all my life so I could own a place where I could hang my hat, put my feet up, and watch Brit Hume clean my pool. In a thong. The problem is when you scream that the system is evil while your own mother embodies that system. So, if what this broad is saying is true, then can we just partition mom's racist house into apartments and maybe use them as Somali daycares? You know, those kids don't make a peep. But here's Weaver walking back her core beliefs.
And something you'd said on Twitter about home ownership being a tool of white supremacy. I wanted to give you a chance to respond. You're not out of your mind, right?
I don't think I'm out of my mind. Okay. You know, I think that some of those things are certainly not how I would say things today and are regretful. But you know, I do think my sort of decades of experience fighting for more affordable housing sort of stands on its own.
Oh man. Oh. She's trying to blind us with her sex appeal. Oh. But it sucks to have to explain yourself. It's just so much easier to apply your idiocy to strangers. But hey, without these spoiled elitist douchebags, we'd run out of actual communists. And as always, their punitive views of fairness rarely apply to the advocates themselves. Bernie Sanders is a socialist who owns 3 homes. Liz Warren, another New England hyper-lefty, has at least 2 in the multi-million-dollar range. Those must be some teepees. And then there's Weaver's mother's house worth $1 million or $2 million. That's not a co-op with peeling paint. It's not a walk-up where the radiator screams like Yoko Ono stepping on a bear trap. That's wealth. The very thing she says is immoral, illegitimate, and must be crushed. It's funny how the revolution never starts at mom and dad's place. Instead, it's the rest of us. She wants to cap rents permanently, restrict landlords' rights, make eviction impossible, all of which reduces housing supply, kills maintenance incentives, and punishes small property owners. It's literally incentivizing slums and trapping people in them. And who does that hurt? The blue-collar guy who owns a 2-family house and rents out the upstairs to pay his mortgage. The immigrant family that saved for decades to buy a rental unit. The talk show host who converted a cardboard factory into a giant bedroom covered with mirrors. But you know who it doesn't hurt? Her. Because the loudest voices always come from people insulated from the consequences of their ideas. They're like a Democrat who tells you to stay home and mask up while they eat at fine restaurants. Or the Democrat who votes against school choice while sending their brat to Fancy Pants Academy and Spa, where the dress code is an ascot and a falconry cap. Or the Democrat who says defund the cops and then goes back to their gated community where even the black people call the cops on black people. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Mamdani sells himself as a proletariat. But this elitist has enjoyed more perks and privilege than a hot chick at a bowling alley. So the next time you hear a lecture about evil private property, ask a simple question: where do you live? And who paid for it? For today's Dems aren't led by the working class. They're led by cosplaying radicals financed by mommy and daddy who somehow escaped the system they claim is rigged. Weaver didn't invent this hypocrisy. She's just the latest activist telling New Yorkers that wealth is racist while standing on a pile of money. She's lucky to be born with a silver spoon in her mouth, because she sure as hell ain't using that for kissing.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.